Hey you! Yes, you! Is this you? So stop. If this is you, I urge you to stop for yourself and for everyone around you. In this video, I'll show you why learning how to control the instinctive urge that almost all guitarists have to speed up is, if not the most important, one of the most important aspects or critical factors in allowing you to make the greatest improvement in the shortest amount of time possible. Stick around until the end and I'll show you how I would work on a lick such as this one, and in general how I would work on all phrases or licks or my technique in general. I'm Dario Napoli, been a professional musician now for over 20 years, touring and recording. I'm founder of the Under the Tuscan Sun Gypsy Jazz Camp, Under the Riviera Sun Gypsy Jazz and Jazz Camp at the Montreux Vevey Conservatory, author of Gypsy Jazz Guitar Mastery, and a few other things that I won't bore you with now. So the truth is that as guitarists, we are nothing more than the result of our daily habits. So a huge factor of improvement is learning how to become hyper-intentional about those habits. Another great truth of guitarists, as stated earlier, is that our natural instinct and tendency is to speed up, sometimes unconsciously. I know this because I'm a guitarist myself, and having many students, when I have my students work on metronome exercises, 95% of them, when they have trouble with the metronome, is because they're speeding up, not slowing down. So if our habit is to speed up, even unconsciously, well, guess what? That will be an element of our playing. And the worst thing about that is that for most people, they're not even aware of it. They'll just speed up and they think everything is fine. So we can all agree that to become better on guitar, what's critical is iterations, which is just a fancy word for repetition. But just repetition is not enough. We need quality of repetition in order to improve. If I'm just repeating, but I'm repeating mistakes and I'm repeating bad habits, that's what's going to constitute my playing. So in order to improve, I have to have quality iterations, quality repetitions. So what constitutes quality iterations? What are quality repetitions? Quality iterations are repetitions where I am aware of my tone and my timing. Tone and timing. These two columns are, in my opinion, the absolute most important columns of your music house. Tone and timing. You must develop the ability to be aware of your tone, which is not just sound, but overall texture of sound, as well as your timing, the ability to control the nuances in tempo. If you consciously or unconsciously focus on speed while ignoring tone and timing, you're doing yourself a great disservice and you will probably run into a tremendous amount of frustration. You'll probably feel like you're never improving, although you might be putting hours of practice time. So tone and timing should be always at the center of your attention. That doesn't mean you can't focus on speed, but not to the detriment of tone and timing. Now, to really make strides on guitar, you have to get into the frame of mind that every time you pick up the instrument, you're going to be better at the end of the session than when you picked it up. Whether you have 5 minutes or 2 hours, it doesn't matter. You can improve in 5 minutes. And you should have the mindset of being better after 5 minutes of practice than when you picked up the instrument in the first place. Now, this is something that's within everyone's reach. It's not some God-given ability or talent or whatever you want to call it that some people have and some people don't. Some people are just conscious about it and some are not. But your habits and your process when you pick up your guitar should be intentional if you want to get the most out of it, like anything else in life, really. So whether you have 5 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, or 2 hours, always try to go into that practice session or that session knowing what you're trying to achieve. Whether it's a lick, or whether it's a chord, or whether it's a tune, or whether it's a solo, or whatever it is that you're working on, try to determine before you even pick up the instrument what you're going to be doing with it and how. So as I promised at the beginning, this is how I would work on this specific lick or phrase, call it as you will. Now, the specific phrase I chose is nothing but a pattern on a dominant chord, in this case B7, but you can also play it on any other dominant chord. And it's simply this. So it's nothing but a repetition of this sequence of notes sort of in cycle that is the phrase over the dominant chord. Now, here's how, if I was having trouble with this lick or with this phrase and really wanted to learn it and make it my own, this is the way I would go about it. And although I wouldn't use the metronome always, at least some of the time, I would use it. Using the metronome is not so much for you to keep time, although yes, keeping time is important, but more importantly, the metronome is essentially stopping you from falling into the guitarist trap of constantly accelerating without even noticing. So it's like the old man on your shoulder that's keeping you at a proper speed. Once you develop that internal discipline, you don't necessarily need the metronome, although it can't hurt. But again, it's not so much to stay in time, it's to stay within that time so that you have time to consolidate that passage and the motor skills associated with that passage. Because you see, when you don't accelerate, you're actually going to be improving a lot faster because you're going to give yourself time to really internalize the mechanics of that specific passage. When you speed up because instinctively you think, oh, I've got this, that's when you're delaying your process of improvement. That's when it's going to take longer to learn that specific phrase or the mechanics associated with that phrase. So I want to make sure that tone and timing are under my control and that I'm feeling relaxed and fluid. Because yes, those are habits too. So if I get into the habit of playing in control and in a relaxed state, that will be my default. If my default is playing apprehensive and accelerating, then that will be my default. And that is undesirable, to say the least. If I know that I don't have that discipline yet, I'm going to make use of the metronome. And I would start as slow can be. Now, I wouldn't change speed or double until I felt completely in sync with that timing and with the mechanics of that phrase at that timing. And if you're crazy like me, what you could do is put on a timer, 5-minute, 10-minute timer, and stay at a certain speed without moving away from it for that allotted amount of time. That will do wonder for your technique and for the speed of your improvement if you just stay at that speed and consolidate. When that becomes comfortable, then possibly I would double. Now, if there was anything about my mechanics or the feeling in my technique that was different at half the speed than at the doubled speed, I would go back, or I would find a middle way. But I want to make sure that when I double, my mechanics and my technique feel exactly the same as they did at half the speed. So again, that allows me to control tone and timing. Once I reach that for about 5 to 10 minutes, I know that sounds crazy, but I guarantee you that will help if you make use of a timer. Also because that will build endurance, which is an important factor in guitar playing, believe it or not. Then when I'm comfortable at slow speed, just as comfortable as intermediate speed, then I will try at a higher speed while trying to maintain that same feeling of relaxedness and fluidity. Once again, I want you to understand that fluidity, relaxedness, accuracy are habits that you develop in your playing consciously. They're not just a result of God-given gifts. Whether consciously or unconsciously, people that develop good guitar skills do so intentionally, whether they admit it or not, or whether they even know it or not. But every time you pick up the instrument and you play, you're consolidating certain habits or others. So become intentional about those habits and you will see how quickly your improvements will start happening. So of course I'd love to know your thoughts. If you have any comments or any ideas, please leave them below in the comment section. And don't forget, in the description there are links to some useful tools that I think you can benefit from if you're new, especially to Gypsy Jazz, but in general to the guitar. My new book, Gypsy Jazz Guitar Mastery, you can find that link below. And also in the description below, the link to the 3 Django weekly transcriptions, which can be great tools to improve your technique and get new ideas. So remember, the metronome is your friend. You don't have to always use the metronome, especially if you develop that internal discipline, then you don't need it so much. But until you have that internal discipline to not rush or speed up, the metronome can help you. Besides keeping the time, especially to resist the urge to speed up and to accelerate. Also remember, your playing is a direct result of your habits. You must become intentional about your habits. And lastly, remember to always be better at the end of any practice or playing session than you were before it started. This again starts with intention. I hope you enjoyed this video and will make best use of it, and I'll see you on the next video.